Calling the meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. And the first order of business is the approval of the February 28th minutes. Anybody care to make a motion?
So move. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, conversation, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. And next up is public comment. Is anybody here for public comment? Seeing no one jumping. We move on to our student representatives report from Monomoy Middle School Student Council. You guys want to come up? We're we're not that high tech here. Come on over here to the podium.
That's not a smart part.
You should ask us. Now's a great time to ask us for a touch screen.
I love it.
And if you guys could say your names too.
Good evening. My name is Christy Beckley, and I'm the Student Council President at Monomoy Regional Middle School. We would like to give an update on our middle school as well as the Student Council projects. Monomoy Regional Middle School, best school ever. This year, Student Council sponsored a Spirit Week to build school community and culture. We spread kindness as a school. January 22nd to 26th was Kindness Week, and Student Council created kind messages on posters to help spread the word. Our whole school chipped in. National Junior Honor Society provided candy before the holiday break, and Student Council ensured everyone received a Valentine.
Hi, my name is Liam Jordan, and I am a 6th grade Student Council representative at the middle school. We have continued our shark sheet this year, and we are still looking for the 5 character traits that we would like to see. They are self-disciplined, hard-working, attentive, respectful, and kind. We have added one more bubble for super actions. Caught by teachers, and some students may even become Shark Council members. On February 16th, students took Rachel's Challenge. Rachel's Challenge is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to making schools safer and more connected.
Hi, my name is Shivani Shakespeare, and I am a 5th grade Student Council representative. Many organizations at our middle school will team up to help clear the courtyard in the center of the school. Tomorrow we will have a Hollywood-themed dance. Student Council welcomes pennies for patience. For the month of April, we will raise money as a school to help fight leukemia and lymphoma. We plan on hosting a talent show on June 15th this year. Student Council believes this will be a fun way to showcase the talent and potential Monomoy Regional Middle School was to offer. We will also hold our 2nd annual leadership lock-in at some point this spring, with sponsors with the event in order to improve leadership qualities in students. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That wasn't so bad, right? Right, so next up we have recognitions. Mr. Carpenter, do you have any recognitions this evening?
I think we have a school committee recognition.
We actually are going to table that until our next meeting.
All right, then we'll move on to.
We'll move on to our reports and discussions then. And first up on that is the Chatham and Harwich Police Security Update with Alice Protocols. I believe we have some representatives from our fine police departments. Maybe?
Yes. It'll just take me a minute to load up the slideshow for everyone.
Okay. You can have the kids do it. They might be able to do it quicker.
Ouch!
Be careful,
Can't
Chair.
have dead air time. I have to speak a little bit.
We are missing Jeopardy.
So Screen
Maybe.
should I? Well,
Mr. Birchfield, can,
it's on the stick, I can't get it there. I'll start anyway. My name is Bill Massey, and I'm a sergeant with the Chatham Police Department. I'm one of the police department school liaisons for Chatham and Harwich. Also, I should mention that Lieutenant Kevin Considine is here as well, and Sergeant Aram Goshgarian. We are just a few of the police liaisons in the schools. Officer Tom Clark is the school resource officer for the high school here and for the elementary school in Harwich, and I don't think he could be here tonight. But with everything that's been going on these last few weeks and over the last few months and the last decade, I guess, the hot button issue seems to be school security and safety. So we're here to kind of update the committee as best we can with what our initiatives are, what our protocols are, and what we've been doing at each school to prepare the students and the staff for any incidents of violence in our building. I do want to point out that as much as I'll be able to discuss today, there are certain things that we won't be able to discuss in open session, and should you seek more information, we can certainly go into an executive session to speak about more specific security and safety protocols. But I think we'll give you enough tonight that you'll be pleased and satisfied with our initiatives. So since I guess the Columbine incident, a number of things have happened and thinking has changed. We're not in a Pac-Man or Super Mario Brothers world anymore. It's a Grand Theft Auto world, and it's a ultimate sniper world that the kids are exposed to. So the things that are available for them to see may certainly play into some of the things that have been happening over the years. We learned from several other school incidents that the traditional lockdown policy as a singular response to an incident in the schools was simply not effective. It was not the best option available. And we can point to a number of school incidents where self-evacuation occurred and survivability increased. So looking at all those statistics, it became very clear with much evidence that the best option was to flee a dangerous situation. And if you think back to when stranger danger was a hot topic, not that it isn't now, but it's certainly not the hot topic that it once was. I remember being a kid in elementary school, and my parents always talked to me about that white van. If that white van pulls up alongside you when you're walking home from school or walking to school, and somebody tries to, lure you inside, you obviously don't go near that white van, and of course you run away as fast as you can. If you parallel that to the current situation that is on everybody's mind, and that's violence in schools, the lockdown procedure as we knew it was pretty much the same as just sitting down if someone in a white van came upon a child to render them harm. So it was easy to draw the parallel that running away from the danger was the best option. We also learned that the police response in situations like that did little or nothing to stop the violence, that usually the violence had ended itself prior to the police responding. So before we can transition to ALICE, which stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate, and not necessarily in that order, before we can transition to that completely, we needed to find something in the interim that would serve our purposes without going to the full-scale ALICE, which presents many infrastructure challenges and different considerations that just aren't practical to solve like that. So we went with the run, hide, fight. And some of you may remember, I think we were here 3 or 4 years ago to brief you on our transition from the traditional lockdown to the run, hide, fight response. And what we're going to talk about tonight is pretty much a review of that, if not just an update as to what that really means. It's not without controversy, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but What it essentially means is that flight, getting out, is the best response option to any type of violent situation or dangerous situation in a school, similar to a fire drill. If the danger is the fire in the building, getting away from that fire is the better option. This program is endorsed by the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the New York City School and Police Departments, which have the largest school population in the country, in New York City. So they believe that it's valued. We also looked at the Massachusetts Task Force on School Safety and Security, and they also endorse the Run, Hide, Fight protocol as your best response option. So as we talk about run, hide, and fight, they actually are presented in that order. Run, being evacuate, is the first response option, and we certainly recommend that to anyone in the school if that is feasible. If getting out is your easiest and best option at that time, that's certainly what we recommend and what we endorse. Short of that, and there's some training that goes along with this for classroom teachers and for students at an age-appropriate level, of course. The discussion we have at the high school is different than the discussion we have at the middle school and is almost nothing like the discussion that we have at the elementary school. It's presented age-appropriately with teachers, with administrators, and with the considerations of what their age and understanding can handle. If running is not an option, and that's getting away from the building, as far away from the building as possible, then we recommend hiding, which would pretty much be going back to our traditional lockdown. And we recommend that going back into that lockdown, if necessary, is hopefully a temporary solution until your escape route becomes a safe passageway. You go to the lockdown to hopefully buy some time until you can actually get out. Many of our schools, classrooms have windows, and while they're not conducive to opening and having people dump out those windows, certainly it came up from students, well, can we smash those windows? And of course, we would never advocate for damaging the school, but in this situation, that's your only option of getting out. That's what you're going to have to do. That's the reality of what we're faced with. We suggest ways that students and staff can barricade classrooms. There's a number of things in the classroom that can help slow somebody down from getting in if that's what they're trying to do. Loading bookcases in front of doorways, chairs, tables, anything that can buy time so that evacuation and fleeing can be something that's available. As a last resort, and we call it fight, I'm not a big fan of that word, but it's a great catchphrase for run, hide, fight. It fits in nicely. As a last resort, defending yourself, defending the classroom is what we say is just going to happen naturally. It's that instinctual human fight or flight process. And when there's no other option, it's just human nature that will kick in. And we've talked with teachers about what are some of the things that can be done. And we certainly don't advocate for, or we're not teaching kids at any level to prepare to fight an assailant. Certainly not. It's do what needs to be done to get yourself so that you can get out and away from that person. There are some school districts that have advocated having kids come in with cans of peas. We're not suggesting that. We're not preparing in a way to do that. We're preparing with strategies and thoughts and expressing the importance of listening to the classroom teacher in any situation. Students, especially at the elementary and middle school level, inherently give that trust to their teachers in the classroom so that in an evacuation or this type of situation, they will likely go along with what the teacher has the class do. Each building has designated rally points for everyone to flee to in the run, hide, fight. We understand that those can look great on paper and they can fit in a plan very well, but they're not always where people may end up. We saw from Sandy Hook in Connecticut that kids were showing up on residents' doorsteps and residents were calling the police saying, I got 6 third graders here, I don't know what to do with them. And they were said, just keep them there, we'll have somebody come collect them and we'll reunify them with their families. So that's always a consideration. The message that we give to people if they have to run and they can't get to the designated rally point is to go somewhere that they feel safe. Our schools are fortunately positioned in areas where there's some areas that can be safe places. We have the elementary school in Chatham. You've got a quick walk to the community center, the church across the street from Old Harbor Road, the downtown area. You can pick almost any one of those businesses. There's several neighborhoods in the area where people know of people. We're a small enough community where families recognize kids, and that's certainly a possibility. With the high school, we're pretty close to downtown. The Main Street area here, there's several safe places that people can go to. Harwich Elementary is pretty much in a great spot, as is the Monomoy Middle School. And the bike path is not far from any of those schools, so that can be a fairly quick egress area should students need to flee. I want to talk about drills a little bit. We've done drills over the past few years, and I think the consensus at the most recent crisis team meeting was that we should increase the frequency of our drills at all of our buildings, and that's something that we're certainly discussing and kind of laying the groundwork to do that so that they match the sort of frequency with fire drills. Currently, there's no crisis drills mandated by the state. There are fire drills mandated by the state, so we're trying to kind of get ahead of that. And by the time the state says we're going to mandate X number of drills per year, Monomoy is probably already going to be at that number. So I think we're pretty much ahead of where we should be. So the drills will be announced in advance at each school. Notices will go home to parents to be aware that kids may come home with, hey, what happened at school today? Oh, we did a crisis drill or emergency drill. There will be no simulated bad guys. There will be no simulated gunfire. There will be no simulated explosions or anything like that. Our focus is to strategize and practice on the how of keeping yourself safe, not the why, the how. And in drilling, we can do that so that if it ever does have to happen, the first time that it happens is not the actual crisis, that they've drilled for it before and it's kind of like old hat almost. And drilling will also get us comfortable with looking at our buildings and our evacuation strategies and how are they working. Is there a bottleneck in this corner that we need to shift one classroom's primary escape route to a different corridor? We will constantly be reviewing that and seeing how things go, and also looking at some of the limitations of our plan. One of the greatest ways to look at limitations and weaknesses in a plan is to watch it play out and see how it goes. So drilling, I think, is going to be very important, and we'll continue to do that. We've been doing, over the last few years, and certainly a little bit more often recently, instruction in each building. Today, I met with Mark Wilson and Adam O'Shea at the middle school, and we had discussions with the 6th and 5th grade about the run, hide, fight protocol. We fielded some questions, very good questions, very mature questions based on what kids are seeing on social media and on the news. And it was a very productive meeting, and I think it went very well. I think we were able to kind of cripple a little bit of the anxiety that has been hanging over people's heads by emphasizing that our buildings are safe, and that we have a plan, and that we're there to protect the students, and everybody's there to protect the students, and that they should look out for one another if they see or hear someone having a bad time or getting to the point where they think that they may do something harmful, then to speak up. But today's discussion was very useful, and I think it focused on the how, and I think it was very well received. Through any of the in-school training, we're emphasizing the how of the situation. At the end of today's talk at the middle school, there were certainly a lot of what ifs. Well, what if this, and what if that, and what if this? We could be here all night talking about that. We could be at the school all day talking about that. We kind of emphasized that it's not important why we're doing this, and quite frankly, at that moment, it doesn't matter why. What matters is how, and that we get it right, and that we do our best to keep everybody safe in the building. So that's the main message, is to focus on the how. Since we've done this, and I think we started doing the run, hide, fight, I think either 3 or 4 years ago. So my daughter's in 2nd grade, and I think we started in kindergarten, so this will be the 3rd year that we've done it full scale with run, hide, fight. The teachers and faculty have been very supportive, and in fact, many have approached me, and I'm sure Kevin and Aaron have heard the same thing. Thank you for giving us these choices. We feel empowered. When we were just doing the strict lockdown, they didn't feel like they really could make a choice, and they felt like they were, handcuffed, for lack of a better term, as to this is what you're going to do, even if they knew that there was probably a better option. So they feel empowered to make decisions. They know that they're trusted, and we have, a week doesn't go by at school without a teacher pulling me aside and asking me, hey, I want you to look at my classroom and tell me if you think this is safe, and I've got this kind of planned out. So they're talking about it, which is great. They're talking about it among themselves. I know some teachers at the elementary school in Chatham, and so at the grade levels, who have adjoining classrooms, have done their own drilling on their own as classroom teachers, and that's great, because if you drill in little components like that, when the whole thing comes together, they'll still function on their own, but everything will work very well. So we definitely encourage that. As I close, before I take any questions that you may have, I want to talk about the possibility versus probability, and I thank Principal Mark Wilson for some of this data. It kind of puts things in perspective. We have to be cognizant that the possibility will always exist, that our school district could be faced with one of these incidents. But to put it in perspective, you have a 1 in 1,200 chance of being struck by lightning in your lifetime. 1 in 1,200. A 1 in 3,700,000, give or take, chance of being bitten by a shark in a lifetime. And a 1 in 292 million chance of winning the Powerball. Your chances of ever living or ever being involved in a hostile intruder situation is 1 in 300 million. So if those of us that get nervous about being struck by lightning let it sit at the corner of our brain, you shouldn't let worrying about a school incident sit at the corner of your brain. Be aware of it, be cognizant of it, but understand that the odds are in our favor. And despite those odds in our favor, we're still very proactive in protecting our schools and our children. I have kids in the district. Kevin has kids in the district. Most of the firefighters have kids in the district, so we're committed to it, not only for professional reasons, but for personal reasons. So we'll continue to look at best practices, make changes where we need to, and we'll certainly keep the school updated and work with them closely as an individual school and as a school district to make sure that our schools are as safe as they can be. I'd be happy to take questions with the understanding that there's probably some things that I probably wouldn't be able to discuss in an open session.
Any questions? Comments?
Just thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for doing your due diligence and your job and protecting our schools and our students. It's very important. And I think we don't have any questions maybe because you've pretty much covered everything. And understandably, there's things we can't ask, and we understand that. But
Well, thank you. It's a
Thank you.
team effort, the police and fire, as well as the schools. The schools are the biggest partner in this, and they make it so that it's fairly easy to implement things like this, especially when they were new. When we first rolled this out, we were expecting a lot of problems, and it actually went very, very well, and it continues to go well. And like I said, we'll continue to move forward and look at best practices as much as we can and do our best to keep doing. I do have printouts of my slideshow, just to prove that there was a slideshow.
Kind of like your dog ate your homework?
I know.
Not really.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, and I think I can speak for the Harwich Police as well as the Chatham Police. We're available at any time should any member of the school committee want to come by, see us, chat with us informally about what some of the challenges we see at the schools or what some of the things that we're doing at the schools. We're always as transparent as we can be, but we appreciate the opportunity to come speak with you today, and it means a lot to us that we have your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. I'm not sure if maybe you guys could stick around just for the next part of our conversation is a discussion on the Chatham Board of Selectmen letter. At the same time as our meeting last week, Chief Polina went to the Chatham Board of Selectmen and shared some of his thoughts and concerns in terms of safety in the schools. And one of those was Chief Polina requesting a full-time student or school resource officer for the 2 Chatham buildings, because Harwich provides a school resource officer for the 2 buildings in Harwich for Monomoy. So we wanted to have a full-time school resource officer for the 2 buildings in Chatham. And that was unanimously approved to provide for us. So that was part of it. And the second part of it was talking about reinforcing, fortifying the buildings for the unexpected and the unwanted possibilities that could happen in our schools. And the selectmen decided to send us a letter basically requesting that we have conversations about looking to options that we could take in our schools, in the districts. So I kind of leave that open up for a little bit to discuss. Mr. Russell?
Thanks, gentlemen, for coming. In the same spirit, I wonder if our discussion should be arranged in such a way that we would ask the superintendent and the principals and our head of maintenance to have a survey of all of the schools, list what is presently done as far as security, list the items that have already been installed, starting, in the facilities. And then I would suggest, in the spirit of things, that we then create a discussion around some of that knowledge base in an executive session.
Okay. Any other comments or questions or suggestions, Mr. Crappy?
Well, in the end of it, they ask, the money's funded through grants, and the grants really aren't available right now. There are 2 going through Congress. One's Securing Children Act out of Texas, and the other was Protecting Schools Act out of North Carolina. One's in committee, and one was just proposed. The one down in North Carolina is for $1.5 billion, but I couldn't find too much available right now for fortifying 4 schools.
Thank you. Ms. Stout?
I think that the officers, I'm familiar with Officer Massey, I think they do a fabulous job. And I'm really grateful that we're looking into this. We've got a great group of people that are, working on the crisis team. Along the same spirit of the thought about what Terry said about asking the administrators, I really think that that's a good idea. I would really like to see the teachers, the secretaries, in each person's role, they can see things that no one else can see, or they're in a better position. So I think that input would be really helpful. I really like what the Chief Polina is saying, because I've always felt that, teaching is our main role, educating the children, but there's nothing more basic than safety. So, and in light of what Steve had to say about the monies, I think that if any monies are available, it seems like Melissa McGuire's always on top of that and can let us know if there is anything, but I think money's the secondary thing. If we knew what made sense, then we could consider about money after that. But things are going in a good direction. So I'm grateful for that.
Anybody else? Mr. Carpenter?
So I can just share, as Sergeant Massey was saying, we had a crisis team meeting last week where we had public safety and administrators and personnel from each of the school buildings. And, we were talking about the selectmen's letter too, in terms of what can we do, sort of what are some of those low-hanging things that we can look at quickly. So things that, that were brought up, again, while it's not fortifying the building, but to come up with regularly scheduled drills, to ensure that we're working with both our staff and our students to have flexible thinking during an emergency, so that you're having drills where there's a hallway that the students can't go down, or a doorway that they have to go and reroute through. The one thing that does involve, I guess, maybe more on the fortifying end, is to look at adding cameras to some of our buildings. We currently have, when we built the high school, we have ample cameras throughout this building. We have some cameras at the middle school, although a very limited set relative to the high school. But again, those cameras were put in as a retrofit, and both of the elementary schools have even fewer cameras. So the conversation was to look at expanding cameras within the buildings that don't have as many. The other thing that has come up in conversations with the police and the police chiefs is to look at having those cameras. Most of the camera video technology these days comes over your internet streams. So to allow the police to have IP access to those cameras in an emergency, so that you can use those cameras to get information. In terms of locks that were brought up in this, to the best of my knowledge, I think we're lucky. Our buildings, I think, are in pretty good shape, and our doors lock. But what we brought up is we have in many of our doors, including central office, there are little magnets that we slide up and down and can keep the door itself locked, and so that you can just slide the magnet and shut the door. But just to go back and make sure that we have those available for each of the doors, and sort of survey the buildings in terms of that. But we had conversations just on some of the things that we can do. Again, I think I'm just very grateful that the Chatham Selectmen voted to fund the SRO, and just for clarity with folks out there, and for the school committee, it was asked, how has Harwich funded the SRO? And the SRO isn't part of the school budget. The SRO comes out of the police department budget, and Officer Tom Clark works hand in hand with the school, and I greatly appreciate how much he's gotten involved. He coaches on our teams, and I think is really involved in kids' lives, and they see him as somebody that they can go to. It'd be nice, and I'm optimistic that we'll see somebody very similar to that in the Chatham schools. But it's that I think the question some people had is like, well, you've already set your school budget for the year. Where's that come? And that's that the SRO is coming on the police side, not on the school side.
Thank you. Any other? Ms. Sheehan?
Resource officer, absolutely the best thing you can have a best person you can have in a school. They're the ones that get to know the kids. My best friend was the resource officer that did lunch duty with me, and he would just go and sit with the kids, and he knew every one of them by name and knew when things weren't right and when things were right. So many things go through my head, but the locks, just make sure that everybody has, if it's a card, that's fine. If it's a key, that's fine. But when you have somebody coming in, say as a substitute, make sure they have the key or the swipe or the lock. Or somebody's using somebody else's classroom, make sure they have access to that. Because otherwise, you can't lock that door. Or you can't get in the door and around. The other thing that goes through my mind, and I've been on a committee where we talked about what can we do differently? Look at how your doors open. Do they open out? Do they open in? That's a big piece, because if you're opening out and you're doing a hide as opposed to a run, the kids are out in the hallway, you're out in the hallway. So doors that open in, much better. There's so many things that can be done to protect the kids, but the drills that you're talking about, that's key. That's key, so that they don't overreact when that happens. So I support everything you said. I like everything you said. I like that you talk about the kids as human beings, and I like that piece too. So thank you. Thank you. But, I can help out.
Any other questions or concerns?
Just one other quick one on locks. We also talked about, at the Harwich buildings, we have magnetic card access to the buildings. The two Chatham buildings have the codes, and we talked about replacing that technology with card readers that would give us a more controlled set of people who have the ability to get in, rather than whichever elementary school teacher happened to see their teacher punch in the code. So that's one other area.
Anything to add or questions or anything? Okay, figured I would ask. Where do we want to go? I have a thought, but where would you like to think to go with the letter from the selectmen? Because they are requesting that we look into and establishing programs, and any thoughts? Or shall I share my thought? My thought, without it being a pass the buck kind of thing, it really seems like this is more appropriate for the crisis team to kind of look at with the administration to say what we have, like Ms. Stout was saying, what we have already in place and where their concerns are. It seems like this would be more fitting for the crisis team to kind of break down than for us to say, yes, we would like to have a door here and a door here. So I don't know if, I didn't do that. I'm not sure if that's a way we can go, if you guys agree with that, or Ms. Stout?
I like that idea. Someone said, I think it was Terry, that maybe the administration should survey or should, and if the staff was included on that, and then that information went to the crisis team, I think would be, I don't really see that as for us to work in this format out all the particulars. I agree with you.
I mean, I look at it as they can come to us, or Mr. Carpenter can come to us with the crisis team's recommendations, and then we figure out where to go from there, either funding or grants or however else. So if that's okay, we'll kind of say the next time the crisis team meets, they can look at Chief Paulina's requests and go from there.
Yeah.
That was way too easy. Thank you. All right, so next up we will move on to the FY19 budget. We are to the point in our budget season where it is time to have our final budget discussions and our budget votes. We have not received, we don't have any updates. Everything is still status quo from 2 meetings ago, I believe, before February break, when we had our public hearing. It was the last time we had any sort of updates, I believe, maybe even prior to that. So if anybody has any questions about the FY19 budget, or conversations or discussion pieces around that, or if we want to just go ahead and jump right into the votes that relate to the budget. Ms. Long?
I move we approve the FY19 general fund budget as follows. Cost center 1,000 for salaries and wages, $943,405. Cost center 1,000 for expenses, $455,069. Cost center 2,000 instruction salaries and wages, $18,404,966. Cost Center 2,000, instruction expenses, 901,708. Cost Center 3,000, wages, 820,956. Cost Center 3,000, other school services expenses, 1,801,093. Cost Center 4,000, wages, 1,151,545. Cost Center 4,000, operations and maintenance expenses, 1,869,369. Cost Center 5,000, fixed charges, 7,471,900. Cost Center 9,000, programs with other school districts, 3,299,567, for a total general fund operating at 37,119,578. In addition, Cost Center 7,000, capital, 355,000. Cost Center 8,000, debt retirement and service, 2,233,776, for a total of $2,588,776, for a total general fund of $39,708,354.
Well done. A second for that motion?
I would second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in, oh, sorry, Mr. West, did you, oh.
I was second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. And Ms. Long?
I move to approve the FY19 assessment as presented in the FY19 public hearing from each town. For the town of Harwich, operating budget of $23,282,215, transportation $430,896, capital $260,038, for a total of $23,973,149, with debt of $1,636,241, for the total FY19 assessment for the town of Harwich at $25,609,390. For the town of Chatham, operating budget $8,368,284, for transportation $149,905, for capital $94,963, for a total of $8,613,151, with debt of $597,535, for a total FY19 assessment for the town of Chatham of $9,210,686. The total for both towns, including operating budget, transportation, and capital, is $32,586,300. Total debt for both towns is $2,233,776, with a total FY19 assessment for Chatham and Harwich of $34,820,076.
Hold on. And a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that is unanimous as well. Thank you, Ms. Long, for that very long motion.
No pun intended on that one.
Did not even catch that. All right, so next up on our agenda is the 2018-2019 school calendar. And this is just the preliminary look at it. We will look to vote on it at our next meeting. There are no major changes to this calendar. This just outlines the first day for staff, first day for students, first day for kindergarten, the fairly normal holidays throughout the calendar year, in addition to our PLC early release days highlighted in yellow, and the last day of school, and then the last day of school with the potential of 5 snow days. Any questions on there, Ms. Stout?
It looks like the vacations are at the general time that we always have them.
Yes.
My question, because I haven't compared this to this year, is everything else, like the teacher days and the start and end, very similar?
It's the exact same calendar as this year, just
Shifted.
rolled forward a year.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
And these days, I'm finding it silly that we're calling them snow days, because so far we've had 2 rain days. But
I had a split in my house of the appreciating the rain day and the not appreciating the rain day. So we'll look to vote on this calendar, so you can kind of chew on it and look at it, make sure there's no questions on there. Anything else? Any questions? All right. Then we move on to school choice for 2018 and 2019. Every year, we are required to approve whether or not we are going to accept school choice students. We don't get to choose whether or not we send school choice students. That's kind of up to them. So we don't have full number updates as of yet, really. This is just.
Right, we use school choice at the elementary level a lot to go and help balance class sizes between the two school districts. So as we have said many times over the last few weeks at different meetings, there's a lot fewer school choice students that we have coming into Harwich Elementary School these days than we used to have, in part because if we bring in school choice students and have those class sizes at 20, per class, which I think there's the potential there. The challenge is it then has us way out of balance with Chatham. So, so what we've tried to do is really focus on our class size guidelines of making sure that we have classes at the elementary level at around 18 plus or minus one student, and then trying to shift choice families towards Chatham to help raise those class sizes up and keep them close. So we'll, I anticipate us probably seeing school choice coming in at most grade levels. I think that we have still a fairly large fourth grade cohort that I anticipate us probably having very limited slots as that cohort comes up to fifth grade, in that we currently are running 9 sections at fifth grade at the middle school, and we'll go back to running 8 sections at the middle school next year. So I anticipate that being tight in terms of available school choice slots at fifth grade. We also have a bumper crop of third graders, particularly at Chatham Elementary School, that I anticipate as they move up to fourth grade that will be limited at the fourth grade level. And then as an administrative team, we've also talked about at the high school really focusing on school choice at just that 8th grade, 9th grade years, and not looking at having a 10th grader per se come in for school choice when you're responsible for that MCAS exam and have very limited opportunities to go and influence that MCAS exam. So so we've really been focused on the high school, looking at join us early on, stay for the next 4 or 5 years, as opposed to join us junior year.
Any questions for Mr. Carpenter about school choice? Mr. Duvall?
Excuse me. At what point do you actually come up with the amounts that we will accept? Is that like in May?
So we will start in the next few days, sort of putting out on our website and just inviting families to apply, and then in the next about a month and a half, we'll notify families if they have been accepted and that there's a spot. If we have more families that apply than we have slots, then we go to a lottery. But we'll, I think probably for our next meeting, we'll have some feel for what we see to be the number of students that we might allow at, let's say, 2nd grade at Harwich Elementary versus 2nd grade at Chatham Elementary. And it can be a little bit of a squishy number, because if you can imagine, if you have a number of kids move in during the summer, you're going in at any moment of okay, wanting to make sure that those class sizes are relatively the same between the grade levels in the two schools, so we can close down school choice, so we can say, okay, we're not going to accept any more second graders at Harwich Elementary School. But then you can't 2 weeks later say, oh, here's a really great one. So once you say, you've closed it down, you've closed it down. The other thing, just so that the committee knows that we have also really stuck to over the last couple of years is we've gotten away from a previous habit, I think, of both of our districts of accepting choice students at any time during the year. And that's largely because I think feedback from particularly the middle school and the high school is, kids that are moving from one school to another school in the middle of the year oftentimes are running from something, and it doesn't mean that the problem just went away. So what we've found is that it makes a lot more sense for us to go and have kids come in, be with us at the beginning of the school year and work with them than to have the doors open and anybody can come anytime.
Good stuff.
For the 11th, 12th grade, I understand about MCAS at 10th grade. Do we have a similar amount of students at 11th and 12th grade? And do we plan to then at 9th and 10th grade, for instance?
We have fewer students at 11th and 12th than 9th and 10th. We have sort of our biggest cohort of kids currently is in 5th grade. So so from 5th grade it's really large and slightly smaller as you get up to 12th grade. But you also have to keep in mind that when you get into those upper grade levels in high school, you're not traveling with just your 10th graders. We're looking at what's the total class size in English classes and junior senior year, not how many kids are in a particular class, but it's just looking at what's the total number we've got.
I know, it's complicated. The other thing is, will you let us know the same time that you're letting the parents know how many students or before that will be allowed into each grade level? Thank you.
Ms. Law.
Just a question on kindergarten. For Chatham Elementary, we're at this point still maintaining 2 kindergarten teachers. And we're anticipating that we'll fill those 2 kindergarten classes, but possibly have room for school choice for kindergarten?
From what I have heard from the Chatham Elementary School principal in her conversations with area preschools is we will have space, we will likely have space in 2 sections of kindergarten to have choice students come join us. And I know when we were at the Chatham Selectmen's meeting, there was this, if we encourage Harwich families to come to Chatham, so we can, we may see some Harwich families that choose Chatham, but realistically to see that number get to 3 sections of kindergarten at Chatham, I would anticipate we might need in the neighborhood of about 24 school choice kindergartners wanting to show up to be able to balance the class sizes with what we would likely have in Harwich.
So with the 2 sections we currently have at Chatham Elementary, we can possibly take a few school choice students, but most of the space is for Chatham residents and...
Right, so we might see at the moment 2 sections of 14, and then if we let's say bring in 4 choice students in one classroom and 4 in the other, and 8 school choice kids in a cohort might be a realistic thing. And I think last year I had mentioned that there were roughly 12 or so Harwich families that expressed interest at Chatham Elementary School. The challenge is if we had that same situation happen this year, we might have to have a lottery and say, okay, these can, and this set, just to keep the class sizes balanced, will have to go to Harwich Elementary School.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Stepp?
Just to follow up to what Jackie's asking, so would there be a preference for school choice? Say you're adding 4 students to each of those, or 8 to the grade. Would there be a preference then first for Harwich students and then allow it to be anyone from any other town?
Well, it's at least the way it's set up is we don't have it's if you've applied and there's space, you have the ability to do that. And then if there are more applications than spaces, it's by lottery. So there's not or at least there is not a school committee policy that has us choosing Harwich first.
I'm not trying to say which way it should be, I just wanted to know which way it was. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about school choice? Mr. Duvall?
I'd like to move that Monomoy Regional School District vote to approve being a school choice district for the 2018-2019 school year.
Second?
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you. We move on to subcommittee reports. Seeing none, we move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Carpenter.
I want to just announce that, and I think I mentioned this at our last school committee meeting, we will have a parent university on almost 2 weeks from now, on Wednesday, March 21st at 6 p.m. here in the library. And if we have more parents, then we can always slide next door to the auditorium. But we'll have Officer Massey and Sergeant Massey and Lieutenant Constantine will be here, along with others, to provide parents some insights in terms of the ALICE training that we do with students. But we'll also have Melissa McGuire here and some of our clinical staff to talk about social emotional supports and mental health things that may be helpful to parents in terms of helping when it comes to overall safety. As Sergeant Massey was talking, I think that there are things that I can look back over a short period of time, relatively speaking, when it comes to our perceptions of safety. And I know that in 2010, we could usually go meet a loved one at the end of gate at the airport, and I was kind of last time I was flying, I was sort of regretting. It's like, okay, when was the last time somebody actually met you at your gate? And it's like, well, it doesn't happen anymore because 9/11 happened, and it changed our perceptions of safety. And I think there was clearly a change in perception of safety before I came here to Monomoy, because and I suspect what happened here in Harwich Public and Chatham Public was the same thing that happened in Sudbury, where I was, where in 2012, at the beginning of the school year, you could walk into any Sudbury school and just, the doors were open. It's like schools were places that you welcomed parents to come into the building. But 2012, Sandy Hook happens, and suddenly, there's this, we need to make sure that every school door's locked, and so you have those locks and cameras, and we have those at each of our buildings. But now it's okay. Let's make sure that once they come into the building that they're on camera, and so it's those things that have sort of fundamentally changed our perceptions of safety. But I do really appreciate the cooperation that we get from our police and fire departments. Then just one last little thing, and when it comes to safety and the unexpected. We had about a few thousand more of these on the roofs of the Chatham Elementary School and the middle school In fact, one of them had a nice little flying leap off of the building at the beginning of the storm onto Dr. Blanchard's hood. Apparently a flying shingle, when it hits your hood on the edge, it doesn't bode well for the hood of your car. But we, if you go see our newly decorated middle school, we've got these beautiful blue tarps and gray tarps all over the place. And while it's not so noticeable on the Chatham Elementary School, the backside of the library roof blew forward over the building into the front yard, and I'll give our custodial staff a lot of credit for coming in during that storm and helping clean up the shingles that were all over everywhere. And our facilities director got a roofing crew on there to have the buildings tarped by the following day. Chatham Elementary School has some water damage in the insulation. So if you go into the library right now, they're still drying out the library because the roof, when it blew off, then had a lot of water come in, so the insulation underneath, and then it dripped down onto the ceiling tiles, so the ceiling tiles then didn't hold, so there was a lot of cleanup that needed to be done. And again, Mother Nature wasn't cooperating because for those in Chatham and in Harwich, we had no power to go clean up the elementary school. In fact, I think it felt like the last building in Chatham to actually get power back was the middle school, which I think happened about 8:30 on Monday evening. The middle school finally got power back. It was, for me as the superintendent, it's driving me a little crazy because the houses right across the street from the middle school had power, but the middle school was still on generator. You're like, okay, guys, there's 5 poles. Can we figure out what's happened? But the Eversource was able to get the power back on. So in terms of because I know as a school committee member, you're saying, what does this mean for our budget? We have to keep in mind that the buildings for both Chatham Elementary School and the middle school, they are the town's buildings. So we've communicated to the town that that there was significant damage to the roofs. So there'll ultimately, I presume, be some sort of insurance involved in it. But we're doing what we can to stabilize both buildings until a fairly significant roofing crew can get around to go patch both roofs back together. But it was, I think maybe I've seen 1 or 2 shingles off the buildings in all of the previous storms, and this was one heck of a storm.
Was any questions for Mr. Carpenter? It was one heck of a storm. And gladly this one wasn't as bad. So, all right, we have reached the end of our agenda. The only thing left is to go into an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law 30A, Section 21, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining units, and we will be coming out for adjournment only. Do I have anybody who would like to make said motion?
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Ms. Richardson.
Aye.
Ms. Sheehan.
Aye.
Mr. Craffey.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Long.
Aye.
Ms. Stout.
Aye.
Mr. Duvall.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. So we are going into executive session, 7:36. Thank you very much.
Clickety-clack.
How about this word?
Did it?
Your roof looks that bad? Oh, God.
I lost it.